Alright guys, that's Kremp again. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day. So far, OpTic MercuLes makes his debut this evening. He's commented for pretty much the first time on what it's like to join the green wall, but also the opportunities that he turned down to get to this point. A potential CDL offer, he says, yes, was there and was rejected. The Toronto bench offer was a possibility too, but it seems like he's made the correct decision with two definitely winnable games this evening and tomorrow. Lots of other talking points on the day as well. Very much interested to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. We'll get back to Pope Illy in a few minutes time actually, because there is some pretty funny stories with regard to Illy and MercuLes that go quite a way back in the day. Just thought it was just kind of interesting to look at the old CDL logos, of course the logos that we no longer have. The Gorillas is still here in spirit. I mean, they're still at the centre of that horrific Gentlemates logo. Of course, OpTic Gaming Los Angeles was a logo in the first year, which is no longer being used. The Huntsman New York Subliners. I think honestly, I hated the Subliners branding on the first year of the league. It did grow on me quite a bit, to be honest. Envy's still the best. Mutineers I kind of miss. Ravens are still Ravens, but now it's blue. And the Paris Legion logo was always just a fleur de lis, right? Like, it was never especially spectacular, but I don't know. There's a little bit of nostalgia in all of these things, isn't there? Now, I imagine there might be more of this to come. There's lots of rumours that next year, of course, the league could well expand. We talked about the Saudi teams. Well, not expand, but just teams might change. We know that Carolina, potentially Boston, those are the next two organisations maybe where the logos I might expect them to get added to this list. We've talked about the Saudi owners coming in potentially, Twisted Minds, Al-Qatsia Esports looking potentially interested. That's been the rumour anyway over the last few weeks. But if you're the league and you're making the decision, look, the league gets to decide on some level who comes in and who doesn't, right? I mean, we always know that when a player is announced, they tend to say pending league approval because technically they have to sign it off. That is certainly true when it comes down to changing teams. If I want to go in and buy a team, TacticalRab Esports or whatever, then, you know, they have to approve it, right? Like, I can't just give loads of money because the league's going to look at it and say, okay, well, you know, what's the sources of this money? Do we think it's best for the league to go this way or whatever, right? So if you're the league and you've got Vegas Falcons already in as one Saudi team, look, if the money is there, sure, I think we will get more Saudi teams in due course. But we've heard rumours for a few years now that there at least are other organisations interested. We have seen Dallas Empire, they did a tweet the other day. We've seen Envy seemingly getting back into Halo. So rumours over the last couple of years that orgs like TSM were potentially interested, Liquid maybe among some others. So there's been a theory anyway that if Ravens and let's say Boston or whatever, they might sell or consider exiting the league, it's not necessarily just the Saudi teams that would be interested. Maybe they can pay the most money, but the league may have other ideas for now. Anyway, that's kind of my theory. We'll see how it goes in due course. I do want to quickly mention this. The funny thing is on this list is I think there's actually another team on this. Was it Shotzzy, Huke, Scump and Illy? I forget exactly, but they played that one league match when Scump played Methods and dropped a 1.3 on his forehead and then retired immediately afterwards. I think in MW2 there was even another team than just this. But yeah, it's definitely been interesting over the last few years. To be fair, you look at the majority of teams, they will look something like this. You know, a number of teams have made several changes. Just for OpTic, of course, it's pretty unprecedented having one champs last year and having 5 different rosters this year. Like, that doesn't usually happen, right? Teams that, let's say, win the World Championship and then blow it up the following year. I mean, it happens. It actually happens very frequently. Even the previous OpTic team to do it, Scump, Formal, Karma, Crimsix, they blew up their team halfway through the following season, but they made one change. Okay, they wanted a different team than Methods and Octane, but that's what they did. They brought those guys in. That was their roster till the end of the year. This OpTic situation has been, yeah, fascinating to say the least. I did want to share this that was on the thumbnail. This is Dashy with his new pair of glasses. So if you guys aren't familiar, over the last couple of weeks, Dashy's been talking about how his eyesight isn't quite as strong as it once was. He's looking at Super, sitting way back from the monitor and thinking like, there's no way that I could be playing like that. So, you know, he feels like he's getting closer and closer to the screen over the last few years. So Dashy's deciding to get these glasses on and, well, it seems like it's going to help his gameplay. I don't know, smash the Brucey over this weekend. I don't know if it's actually going to benefit him, of course, or not, because it's not like he couldn't see the screen, but he felt like maybe a pair of glasses might be a good idea anyway. So that's all locked in for the upcoming weekends. But MercuLes, now officially an OpTic member. And, you know how it is with OpTic, right? They're going to do the full world tour of all the podcasts, which is great. I'm going to be watching all of them, of course, as are many of you guys. I think it's interesting with this decision because Hex again made it clear in the podcast that we're going to look at a couple of clips from that he was the one to make the call initially. He said, look, we're going to do this. And then the team got on board, right? So, like, he was the first person to at least propose it to the likes of Shotzzy and Dashy. Like, the clip that we shared yesterday, he didn't mention Huke. I know there was talk about that, like, oh, he didn't even talk to Huke. He did. Like, I can't share the entire, just time that he was discussing it. He did mention on stream that he was also talking with Huke about this possibility as well. So yes, he did converse with the entire team and with the entire coaching staff about whether this was a good idea or not. Methods, we know, gave his perspective. Scump, at least, was told about it, but didn't, maybe agreed in principle, but didn't necessarily make the decision, as it were. But I think it makes sense. But also, I think from, the OpTic and the Hex angle, the team and the org was getting a lot of criticism from the fans, and, I imagine this might have played a part to some degree. Like, as much as you might think that MercuLes was the right choice, or that Skyz should have stayed, or whatever the case is, I think it's no secret that the majority of OpTic fans wanted this change. There was calls for it after the major, and there was lots of calls after Skyz was to stay. I mean, if you look at the comments, even I think on the OpTic subreddit, there was lots of comments saying, I can't believe, the Warlord isn't making the move or whatever, right? Like, there was a feeling for many OpTic fans as to almost, they've given up on the season type thing. And, I'm not saying OpTic are ever going to, lose fans precisely, but there certainly were OpTic fans seeing the decision to keep Skyz after Major 3 and saying, you know what, I'm pretty checked out for the rest of the year. We'll see what we do in the off-season, right? So I think, for Hex, in terms of keeping the fans engaged and on side, there was maybe a part of that in the decision to say, look, well, this is what the fans want. And does it seem like a reasonable decision? Yeah, it does. So let's do it, right? And that's now what they've decided to do. So yeah, Hex talked about this. I did mention the Huke situation. I just wanted to clarify that real quick. Of course, the entire team were giving him some advice, really. And look, obviously Merc's going to be pretty nervous playing his first series for OpTic, but I don't think any more nervous than he would have been playing his first series on LAN with Toronto, right? The poor guy walked out on stage, didn't know where to go, right? He stood on the X, and then his teammate walked to the setup, so then he realised he had to follow them. Shotzzy's obviously been giving him lots of gas over the last couple of days. Their scrims, it seems, have gone rather well. Look, I'm not going to get into the whole Friday in scrim situation and debate again, but look, I'm sure it's not the last time that we're going to talk about it. So, a couple of clips I wanted to share for this episode while we look at Shotzzy deal with that latte. And MercuLes talking about, well, offers that were on the table. Methods talked about it. Like, there were definitely, Methods got involved in some of these discussions to say, okay, how's Merc getting on? Is he going to sign this contract? Is he not? As far as we understand, Cloud9, the offer was there. It may have been a reasonable offer, but given the general circumstances around the teams that may have been interested in MercuLes in due course, especially the OpTic thing, he made the right decision to kind of decline it and say, look, I'm not going to go for this right now. Toronto's bench was an option too. And of course, in hindsight, very clear that MercuLes made the correct decision, even though it's difficult, right? I mean, you're, young player, just got a great opportunity to play with Toronto at the event. You do so well at the events. Teams are knocking on your door, hitting you up. Not on your door, I'd imagine. I mean, they're in your DMs, they're emailing you, they're doing whatever, they're talking to, obviously, like Rafi maybe at Omid and trying to have these discussions. And you've got guys like, Accuracy, very storied player, who's probably speaking with you, or maybe, I don't know, maybe Accuracy wasn't involved, but the team at Cloud9 were involved. They're having a conversation, say, hey, we think you'd be a great fit. Here's the offer. This is the amount of money we can pay you. You'll be part of the organization for this amount of time. It's going to be great to get to play with Dante Sib. It's difficult to say, actually, no thanks. As a player who, a few weeks ago was not even in the conversation for getting a spot, now all of a sudden you've got a very well-known organization giving you a contract. The same with Toronto. It's difficult to decline it in those situations, I'm sure. But with OpTic potentially an option, obviously he made the right call.
Call of Duty of all time.
AW.
AW? You feel like Advanced Warfare was like your best game?
No, not my best, but favorite.
You think you were gunning me?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I like that.
No, I had like a 50 and 0. I literally had like a 50 and 0 1v1 team. Like my first ever
Really?
50 to 1v1 team?
Yeah.
Radar always on?
No, just
Hell
$1.
yeah.
$1 best of threes. But.
You weren't gunning me, man. Come on. I was trying to get some dope there and be like, no, he's just says
I'm not
yes.
gunning King Scump.
Just shuts me down. Skype shut down? I know
There was a lot of talk about, because obviously the whole world thinks you're not coming here. Everyone was like, how does this kid go to go to the event, place top 3, and not get an opportunity? But correct me if I'm wrong. You turned down a different offer?
Yeah.
So you had a CDL offer that you turned down. And then also, I believe Ultra gave you the option to be a bench player?
Yeah, they did too.
Okay, so you had
I had
opportunities
options,
before this one came about.
This was pretty funny as well, right? Where Scump was expecting MercuLes to say, that's the king, right? Like, I wouldn't be able to gun the king in Advanced Warfare. Maybe Scump's best game, right? Like, Advanced Warfare Scump is held in very high esteem, and for very good reason indeed. Scump was great at multiple titles, pretty much every title, but Advanced Warfare was arguably peak Scump, but it's pretty funny that MercuLes looks back on those days and says, that was like his favourite game. I mean, Advanced Warfare came out in 2014, MercuLes I think is 21 now maybe, so he was born in 2003, so he was 11 when Advanced Warfare came out, which is kind of wild, because I was 11 when Black Ops 1 came out, and still I'd consider Black Ops 1 one of my absolute very much favourite games because it's the first one I played. So maybe, but that's not even true for MercuLes because he was playing COD since he was 5 or 6. He mentioned it in this episode, so I thought it was kind of wild, but entertaining anyway. Seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders as well. Shotzzy's been gassing him up based on the scrims they've played so far. Pretty chill, pretty down to earth. Doesn't seem like he's going to be getting too when you get players that are hotheads, right? I'm not saying MercuLes isn't going to talk a bit of trash when he wins, but I think that OpTic also need a player who's going to be a little bit more stable, right? Just because of the way the rest of those guys, sometimes I think Merc could be a useful, addition to the team. Look, is he going to be a leader? Is he going to be a ghosty? No, I think you can tell the personality is different between MercuLes there and what Ghosty was like joining OpTic, but a player like Ghosty, a player like MercuLes is rare to find. I mean, obviously talented, just come around over to even make it on this level, playing anything in the respawn modes over the last year or so, really. But to find a player like Ghosty as a rookie with that kind of leadership abilities and comms and these other factors, just so rare. And look, maybe MercuLes is more talented than Ghosty on a gunny perspective. I think you could definitely argue it. We'll see maybe in due course whether that proves to be true or not. But Ghosty was kind of the player that OpTic needed back then because of that leadership element and the other things that he actually brought to the table, even as a rookie. This is the same team. It's Shotzzy, Huke, Dashy, as it was in MW2, but with MercuLes instead of Ghosty. So it's kind of similar. But MercuLes, I think, will bring different aspects to the team. But obviously now those players are a couple of years older. So the leadership and the comms of Shotzzy, Huke, Dashy, certainly I would say Dashy should be better than they were a couple of years ago, which I think I would argue is true. So maybe they don't need that kind of type of player any longer, right? So intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. The final thing before we mention the games of tonight is this, because this, you guys, but even as I start to play this clip, I'm sure some of you guys will recognize it. This is a legendary clip where iLLeY and Shotzzy are playing a 2v2 chal here on Frequency. This is, of course, Black Ops 4. And this, I think after the round ends here it says 3-3, but I think they had to reset the map. This was last map, round 11, between iLLeY in a 1v2 with the Maddox and two fellas on the other team. I don't know what that clown is doing, but they bottled it. And that final kill there was Merc. So the last guy who died here was Merc. There's a funny story about this because I think Merc's teammate, after losing this series, because they both rage quit immediately, he quit COD and went to join the US military or something. This was the final straw. iLLeY clutching this 1v2 and talking all kinds of trash. So, because there was a lot of money on the line here and they bottled it. MercuLes' team bottled it twice. So kind of crazy to look back on really, because this is a legendary clip and it has a funny story attached to it. And the fact that MercuLes was the man who actually got killed there to close out the rounds was pretty insane. So speaking of Merc, he's got a couple of games to play this weekend, and I'm sure the OpTic fans will be watching very closely indeed. These are the matches. Falcons play Heretics tonight. Big game for the Falcons. I mean, maybe it's not really, because who cares? Falcons aren't making it to the World Championship anyway. But they're trying to play spoiler. And look, there's only one weekend in. They can plausibly, Falcons, make it to winners, make some noise at the tournament, and get themselves in a good position trying to go into the World Cup, right? They're not going to be at the championship, but if they can do well at Major 4, there's obviously going to be thoughts as well as to whether, let's say they don't, well, they're not going to make champs. Do they make changes post Major 4 going into the World Cup? Are they able to do it with the roster lock? Look, I think the reality is, certainly if you're Falcons, if you want to make changes, you probably can. So, yeah, there's got something to think about as well. Exnid's been absolutely cooking in some 8s over the last couple of days too. They'll play the Heretics tonight. Then OpTic, as I play this clip out, play the Boston Breach. Of course, let's not forget they played at the Major in the first rounds. That didn't go so well for OpTic, but it's a different team now. Boston have looked shaky, to say the very least, last weekend. So I'm expecting this to be competitive, but honestly, I think that OpTic can win it. The question, I guess, is a little bit on the search and destroy. MercuLes just come in. How's the search going to look? Maybe not, like, perfect. But, yeah, OpTic 3-1, OpTic 3-2. FaZe Cloud9, tough one for Cloud9, of course, this evening up against, you know, a team that's been looking on fire so far, but Cloud9 desperately needs any points they can get. I mean, really, Cloud9 need OpTic to lose. They can get 10 points on the board, then maybe they're going to start working on something, but it's probably not going to happen. Very much interested in your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.